بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس لعلهم يتذكرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. The phrase "a match made in heaven" is used to describe a union between two people or two objects which is successful and compatible. And when we say a match made in heaven, what we think of as Muslims and as the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is the divine union between Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatimah al-Zahra alayhas salam, alayhumas salam. When the order, the command came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Jibreel to the Prophet to establish a union between these two individuals, he says to him, Ya Rasulullah, zawwij al-noora min al-noor, that enjoin the two nur, the two illuminations with each other. And when you study their house, you study their home, their lifestyle, you find that their home, materialistically speaking, was empty, but spiritually it was full. It was manifest with the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obeying Allah. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه. The homes where the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned. A home where champions were built. A home where people manifested the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. When you look at the product of these homes, you find people like Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam, who the hadith says, كان أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسول الله. The most similar person to the Prophet in his nature, in his appearance, in his speech. A person whom when his father, Imam Hussein, asks him about death and his opinion on death, he tells him, he says to his father, أولسنا على الحق? He says, are we not on the path of truth? Imam Hussein answers in the affirmative. He says, yes. He says, إذن لا نبالي وقعنا على الموت أم وقع الموت علينا. Then we shall not heed if death falls upon us or we fall upon death. This is the spirit of a champion. You find Al-Qasim alayhi salam, Al-Qasim ibn Al-Hassan, a man who was raised in the home of his father and his uncle. When his uncle asks him on the day of Ashura about the nature of death, he says, في نصرتكم أحلى من العسل. If it is in your victory, if it is to support you, then it is sweeter than honey. A boy of 13 or 14 years old. We have to ask ourselves, where is this spirit of a champion built? Allah says, في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه. These are the homes which molded these kinds of people. And Imam Al-Hassan Al-Mujtaba salawatullah wa salamu alayhi was a product of these homes. As a grandson of the Prophet, he manifested the attributes, the characteristics of the Prophet himself. And in order to understand the meaning of characteristics and attributes and how they are transferred through heritage, because their heritage came from whom? Came from the Prophet himself, Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. In order to understand this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us in the Quran the parable of the tree. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا كَلِمَةً طَيِّبَةً كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا. According to the hadith, when we see in what occasion was this verse revealed, what does it refer to? According to the hadith, it says, Rasulullah asluha. Rasulullah, he is the basis, he is the root of this tree. وَعَلِيٌّ فَرْعُهَا. Ali ibn Abi Talib is the branch. وَفَاطِمَ غُصْنُهَا. Fatima al-Zahra is also the branch. وَالْحَسَنُ وَالْحُسَيْنُ ثِمَارُهَا. And Al-Hassan wal-Hussein are the fruits which are born by this tree. And according to some hadith, the Shia, the followers of those people, of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, are the leaves. وَشِيعَتُنَا وَرَقُهَا. This is the tree which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the Quran. And in order to understand the heritage, how the prophets, how the Imams of Ahlul Bayt were able to manifest the will of the prophets, we also use the example of the tree. A tree passes through stages. A tree begins as a seed, and it develops into a root. And once it has passed that stage of the root, it develops into a tree. And this is where the tree bears its fruit, where it gives off oxygen, where it is able to give off its fruit, and where people are able to make use out of it. And a tree is not complete in its seed stage or in its root stage. If you compare this tree, the parable of the tree, to that of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, when we visit them, we say, خَلَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ أَنْوَارًا فَجَعَلَكُمْ بِعَرْشِهِ مُحْدِقِينَ. That He created you as light, illumination. Meaning that these attributes, which were manifest later on in life, they were there, these attributes existed, but they were dormant. Just like a seed has the energy to produce a tree, a root, and fruit, but it is dormant. The energy is not placed in the right environment. So this is the first stage where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the prophets and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt as illuminations, where they were dormant. The second stage is prophethood, and that is represented by the root. The same way a root is a developed form of the seed, but the root cannot develop any fruit, can't develop anything. The third stage manifested itself in the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and they represent the fruit. And this is why the hadith says, in reference to the verse when he says, تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا, that this fruit, this ukul, this tamara, this fruit that is given off, is represented by the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And this fruit, you can take it, and by studying it, you can tell which tree it comes from. It has the attributes and the characteristics of that tree, and it has the characteristics of that seed. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt, beginning with Al-Hassan wal-Hussein, took their attributes, their characteristics, exactly from the prophets, and only from the prophets. Now you ask, well, what about their father? Their father is not the son of the prophet. The father, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam Ali, the prophet says to him, Ya Ali, أنا وأنت من شجرة واحدة وسائر الناس من أشجار شتى. Me and you are from the same tree. Me and you are from the same root. Me and you are from the same seed. We are created from the same illumination. So everything that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt manifested was taken straight from the Prophet and only from the Prophet. We carry the traits of our ancestors. It is the environment which we are placed in which allows us to manifest these traits. It's like when a person catches a cold. When a person catches a cold, you cannot catch a cold by simply walking out into cold weather. The virus has to already exist inside of you. Once you are exposed to that kind of harsh environment, then you begin feeling the symptoms of the cold. Likewise, your attributes and your characteristics are hereditary. They come from your parents. It is the environment which you are placed in which allows those characteristics and those attributes to manifest themselves. So Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, both of them, they came from the same source. It was the environment that they were placed in which allowed each one of them to manifest the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do not say Al-Hussein is better than Al-Hassan. Why? Because Al-Hussein stood up with a sword and fought. No, they are both from the same. But rather, the situation did not present itself. If Al-Imam Al-Hassan would be placed in the same situation as his brother, Al-Imam Al-Hussein, surely he would have fought. Surely he would have stood up and fought. But the opportunity did not present itself. So that's why there's two important things. There's the environment that you place your children in, not only the environment, but rather the source. This is why Islam emphasizes that when it comes to establishing marital ties, when you want to get married, the partner that you look for should be appropriate. They should be able to produce fruit, to bear fruit. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in the hadith, he says, اختاروا لنطفكم فإن العرق دساس. He says that choose the repository for your seed, where you're going to bury your children. Not every soil, not every repository can bear fruit. It's like if you were to take a seed right now from an apple tree or an orange tree and go to the North Pole and plant it and say, I want to begin a plantation here. I want to start producing grapes and oranges and apples and different kind of fruit. Will it work? No, because the soil cannot handle. The soil does not possess that energy. So you choose wisely where you want to put your soil, in a place where there's beautiful weather, in a place where the soil is healthy, it can produce. That's why when it comes to establishing marital ties, Islam teaches us to choose exactly the repository. Choose your wife, not only as a wife for you, but as a mother for your children. Why? Because the characteristics that your children will have are hereditary. They come from you and they come from her as well. They come from the wife and from the husband. Placing them in the proper environment only merely allows them to manifest these characteristics. The Quran and the Hadith even tells us that disbelief is hereditary. Nuh, when he speaks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَقَالَ نُوحٌ رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَّارًا إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ يُضِلُّ عِبَادَكَ وَلَا يَلِدُ إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَّارًا. He says, O Lord, if you are to take these people, these non-believers, take all of them. Do not leave one of them on this earth. If you are to leave them, they shall produce nothing but immoral disbelievers. لا يلدوا. They cannot. إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَّارًا. That tells you that disbelief is hereditary. Now the question comes that, are we forced to disbelieve? No. At the same time, every single human being, no matter what his parents are, no matter what his grandparents are, still has free will. He still has the right to choose between right and wrong. So the Quran tells us that even disbelief and immorality comes through hereditary means, from the parents, from the ancestors. And this is why, when you look at the grandchildren of Rasulullah, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein, you find that their characteristics came from who? Not the environment, only the environment that they were placed in, but they came straight from the Prophet. How many ahadith do we have which emphasize the similarities between Imam Al-Hassan and Imam Al-Hussein with their grandfather Rasulullah, and the way they looked, and the way they spoke, and their characteristics, the way they treated people, even the way they ate, the way they walked, the way they dressed. All of this came straight from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Having said that, we say that not only did they inherit his attributes of generosity, of morality, but they even inherited the same attributes which gave our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam precedence over all other prophets. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Whatever characteristics that made him have precedence over other prophets, greater than other prophets, these characteristics were passed down through his daughter Fatima, through Amir al-Mu'mineen, to Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. Many of our traditions say that they were the most similar to the Prophet. And I'll give you one example of the generosity of Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam. He is known for his generosity just like his grandfather Rasulullah. During the time of the Khilafah of his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, when they were living in Al-Kufa, Imam Al-Hassan had his own home. People would come to the door of Al-Hassan, knowing of his generosity. They wouldn't necessarily go to his father. They knew him for his generosity, and they would go straight to him. Why? They knew of his generosity. His generosity was known among everyone across the empire. And that's what brought people towards him. In another example, it is said that one day Imam Al-Hassan and his brother Imam Al-Hussein and Abdullah ibn Ja'far, their cousin, were out traveling together, and they did not have anything to feed themselves with, so they found a Bedouin woman. And this Bedouin woman had cattle, she had sheep, so they requested from her that she give them one sheep. And they told her that when you come back to Al-Medina, we will pay you, we will repay you. So she gives them the sheep, they take it, they slaughter it, and they prepare it, they feed themselves, they go back to Medina. She, after a while, she follows them. She comes to Medina seeking her compensation, her promised reward. So she goes to Imam Al-Hassan, and he returns her with 1,000 sheep. She gave one, he gave her 1,000. She goes to Imam Al-Hussein, he gives her 1,000. And she goes to Abdullah ibn Ja'far, he gives her 1,000. She gave one, they gave her back 3,000. Look at that, what kind of generosity is this? We have so much to learn from these people. And I ask you as the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and I conclude with this, that if these people compensated a woman who did not even know them, she didn't know who they were, a Bedouin woman, then what is the case with us, people who love the Ahlul Bayt more than they love themselves? We teach ourselves that the Ahlul Bayt are more important than us. We owe our entire lives to them. Do you think if we dedicate our time and our energy to them, they shall not compensate us? If they compensated a woman, for one sheep they gave her back 3,000. How much do you think they will give us, our followers, who follow her, and who spend our time and our money and our energy for their sake? Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us and to allow us to gain proximity to them in this life and to achieve their intercession, their shafa'ah in the next life. I would like to congratulate all of you on this very auspicious occasion. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue blessing us in this holy month and to accept our deeds and our acts of worship. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله